The old desert wind moved like a tired breath across the silent valley, carrying dust, broken memories, and the faint smell of something long forgotten. The sun beat down on the lonely land, turning every stone hot enough to burn skin. For many years no one had lived near those ruined houses, and no horse tracks, wagon wheels, or campfire smoke had been seen around. Travelers avoided that place and spoke only a few quiet words whenever anyone asked what happened there. Some called it cursed, some said haunted, and some believed it was a place where people vanished without leaving any sign. No one really knew the truth, but every whisper carried a warning that made even brave men change direction. Yet one evening, a strong Apache warrior walked toward that silent land. His bare feet sinking into the hot sand with each heavy step, his long dark hair moving with the breeze, and his sharp eyes fixed on the broken village ahead. He had heard those stories since childhood, but he never trusted tales that grew inside fear. His tribe lived many miles away near the hidden mountains, but a sudden desire pushed him to travel alone and see what others refused to face. He wanted answers, not rumors. There had once been water in that land, a deep well that never dried. It was said that even in the hottest summers, that well stayed cool and sweet, giving life to anyone who arrived thirsty and tired. But then something changed, and the place turned empty, as if every heartbeat inside those buildings stopped at the same moment. Some claimed that people disappeared at night without making a sound. Others said they heard children crying when no one was near. The warrior did not believe in such voices, not until he saw with his own eyes, not until he stood where others refused to walk. The broken houses stood like skeletons made of dirt and rock, their roofs half gone, and their doorways leaning like tired shoulders. The windows were hollow and dark, as if eyes once filled with life had now sunk into empty sockets. The ground was cracked, and weeds had taken over every corner. But the strangest thing in that land was the silence, a silence so deep that even the wind seemed afraid to speak. No insects, no birds, no distant animal steps, only an empty quiet that felt heavy enough to press against a man's chest. The warrior stopped near an old fence post and studied everything around him. His instincts, trained from birth, sharpened like a knife. It was clear that no one had lived there for a long time, but something in the air felt recent, as if a shadow had passed moments before he arrived. He slowly moved forward, scanning the ground. Not for human tracks, but for anything unusual. He saw no signs of fresh activity, yet his senses warned him that he was not truly alone. He remembered the stories told by traders near the river. They said the well was abandoned after something strange happened down there. Some believed water turned black, some believed a spirit lived inside, and others heard cries rising from deep below. Not like human, not like animal, something in between. The warrior never allowed fear to guide him, but he respected what nature tried to tell. Still, he continued walking, driven by curiosity, and perhaps something much deeper that he could not explain. On his back he carried only a hunting knife and a small pouch of dried food. He came neither for gold nor land. His purpose lived inside his thoughts, silent but strong. A few days earlier, while sleeping by a campfire near a river, he had seen a strange dream. In that dream, he saw a little village just like this one, with a well standing at the center. A soft light shone from inside the well, and he heard the faint voice of someone calling for help. He had awakened with sweat on his forehead even though the weather was cold. That dream did not leave his mind, even after sunrise. He was not a man who followed dreams, but something about that voice stayed inside his heart like an unfinished song. He stepped closer to the well now, looking at its stone walls. It was old yet stronger than everything around it, like a secret kept safe through storms, heat, and time. A wooden roof sat above it, still holding together even though most other wood in the village had turned gray and weak. A rope hung from the crossbeam, but the bucket was missing. The opening looked dark and bottomless. The warrior sensed something beneath, something hidden, something that breathed but did not want to be known. His chest tightened, but he walked closer until he could feel the cold air rising out of it. That was strange because the day was burning hot, yet the breath coming from inside felt like winter. He placed his hand on the stone wall and slowly leaned forward to listen. At first, he heard nothing. Not the wind, Not his own breathing, only a deep silence that seemed to pull him inward. Then after a short moment, something faint touched his ear. A soft sound, weak and distant, like someone crying or whispering from a faraway place. He froze, unsure if it was real or his imagination. He waited, listening more carefully. The sound came again, slightly clearer this time, carrying a sad and desperate tone. It sounded like a voice, maybe young, maybe in pain, maybe afraid. He stepped back and looked around, half expecting to see someone hiding behind the ruined homes. But there was no movement. His heartbeat grew stronger. Suddenly he noticed something beside the well, half buried in sand. It looked like a small wooden object. He kneeled and brushed dust away. It was a child's toy shaped from wood with worn carvings of simple patterns. It looked like it had been held many times by small hands. The warrior stared at it, feeling a strange ache in his heart. Children were sacred among his people. Their laughter carried the future, and their tears meant danger. The presence of that toy in a place like this felt wrong. It's like a warning or forgotten message. He stood again, looking toward the ruined homes. One house had a broken door hanging by a single hinge, moving slightly with every breeze. The doorway was dark, but something inside caught light for a second, like a movement or reflection. He narrowed his eyes and watched. Nothing happened, but he could not shake the feeling that someone was watching from within. He slowly approached, every step quiet and careful. The sand under his feet shifted without making sound. As he reached the doorway, he placed his hand on the frame and leaned inside only enough to see. The interior was empty, cold, and full of shadows. A layer of dust covered everything, yet he felt a fresh scent in the air, like someone had been there not long ago. He took one small step inside and noticed a thin rope lying near the corner. It was tied to a wooden pole and looked new, out of place in such a forgotten area. The rope led toward the back of the house, disappearing into darkness. The warrior stared at it, his body tense, wondering what it was connected to and who placed it there. The sound from the well returned softly in his ears, as if calling him back. Suddenly a cold wind passed through the doorway. Even though the air outside had not changed, something unseen shifted inside the room, like a slow breath being released. His skin rose with chills, and he stepped backward toward the open ground. His instincts warned him that he was standing between something hidden and something watching, and that he needed to decide whether to leave the village forever or follow the strange signs, leading to a truth no one dared to face. He turned his eyes slowly from the dark room back to the well as the faint voice from below became clearer than before, almost sounding like words that were trying to reach him. He had come to find answers. But now he realized answers might demand a price, and then, out of the silence, something from inside the well moved. He felt the air around him change, as if the ground itself understood that someone was finally listening. The rope hanging above the well swayed slowly, not because of wind, but as if something deep below had pulled it. He did not step closer right away. Instead, he forced himself to breathe slow and steady, letting his senses guide him. His tribe had taught him since childhood that danger does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. He stared into the dark circle of stone and wished the light from the sun would reach deeper. But it stopped only a short distance inside, and everything below became an endless shadow. His mind traveled back to his early years. When his elders spoke about the spirits of land and water, every mountain, tree, lake, or well was believed to have a memory. If treated with respect, it offered life. If ignored or mistreated, it could change from blessing to warning. He wondered what history lived inside this place. Something must have happened strong enough to empty homes, stop fires, silence animals, and erase tracks of life. He touched the stone again, feeling its rough surface. It was colder now, much colder than before. Like something beneath was breathing out frost. He turned away from the well and walked deeper into the ruin. Village to understand where people lived and why they vanished. As he moved, he studied each home, each doorway, each broken chair and forgotten tool. Everything looked like people left in a hurry. A cooking pot still sat near a faded fire pit. Dried herbs hung by a window, but had lost their scent, and a leather boot was left near a wooden bench. He imagined how the small community might once have been, with children playing, women preparing food, men tending fields or guarding land, and voices rising with laughter at evening. Now, only dust remained, hiding stories that no one had told. He entered another old home and found a long wooden table turned sideways, as if pushed when people were rushing out. The table had carvings on its edge, showing a simple pattern of leaves and waves, made with affection, not haste. Beside it stood a cradle, small and hand-built. His heart paused as he looked at it. The cradle was empty, but the cloth inside was not too worn. It seemed newer than everything around it, like someone had replaced it, or someone still used it. The warrior touched the cloth gently. It felt clean, soft, and strangely warm, unlike anything in the house. His thoughts filled with uneasy questions. Was someone still living here in secret? Or did someone return at night and leave again before sunrise? As he stepped outside, he looked toward the distant hills, trying to guess if eyes were hidden behind rocks or bushes. For a moment, he felt certain he was being watched. Not by a wild animal, but by someone who knew his presence was not an accident. He decided to stay calm. Fear breaks focus, but control brings vision. So he walked toward a wooden post where a faded cloth dangled. He lifted it and saw that it once held a hand-painted mark. The paint had nearly vanished, but it appeared like a symbol, perhaps used as a warning or protection. His tribe used symbols as well, and he understood their meaning was never small. Someone in this village had known danger was coming, or danger was already here. He walked back to the center where the well stood like a silent guard. The mysterious sound from below had vanished now, replaced by a slow echo that could either be imagination or something moving far down. He wondered how deep it was and who built it. Wells were sacred because they carried life. No one abandoned water without strong reason. He looked around and noticed footprints in the sand near one of the houses. They were small, likely belonging to a child, and they looked fresh, not from years ago. He touched the sand to confirm. It had not hardened over them yet. That meant someone had walked there recently. Very recently, he followed the small prints, keeping each footstep quiet like a hunter tracking deer. The prints led behind 3 broken houses and stopped near a pile of wood. He gently moved a piece aside and found something shocking. A loaf of bread wrapped in cloth, still soft and not dry. Someone was hiding food here. That meant someone was still present in this deserted place. It was not a ghost or spirit, but real human life. He looked around slowly, knowing whoever placed it might be close enough to see him now. He did not want to scare them away, nor did he want to become a threat. He placed the wood back carefully, as if he had never touched anything. He moved back into the open. Where anyone watching could see his empty hands and calm posture, he called out softly, saying he came in peace and only wanted truth, not land or harm. His voice traveled over the ruins, but no response came. The silence pressed heavier, yet he sensed someone listening. He walked toward another corner of the village and saw something hanging from a nail on the wall. It was a leather pouch. Inside, he found small, dried berries, a hand-sewn cloth, and a feather tied with thread. The items looked carefully placed, not lost. These were survival belongings, not leftovers from many years ago. Someone was living quietly, in fear or secrecy. The warrior remembered the dream he saw by the river. In that dream, he heard a frightened voice calling for help. Now, standing here with evidence of life hidden in abandoned land, he wondered if the voice in his dream belonged to a child trapped in this place. Maybe someone was trying to protect them. Maybe someone could not leave. But what kept them here? And why did they not show themselves? His curiosity turned into a deeper responsibility. He could not walk away and pretend he saw nothing. Suddenly, he felt the ground vibrate very lightly under his feet, almost like a slow knock from beneath. He turned his head toward the well again. The rope swayed once more, only this time it moved with more force, as if someone below had touched it. He stepped closer with caution and placed his hand on the rope. It carried a tiny tremor like a pulse. He called out gently, asking if someone was down there, but there was no clear reply. It's only a faint moan or breath floating upward. He needed light. So he walked outside the village to search for dry branches and brush to make fire. While collecting, he studied the land around. There were no wagon tracks leaving the valley, nor animal bones that suggested a wild attack. The emptiness looked planned, not chaotic. He built a small fire near the well and kept it low so it would not frighten whoever was near. He let the flames burn just enough to make a torch using a piece of cloth dipped in dry fat from his pouch. With the torch lit, he walked back and leaned over the well, lowering the flame as far as his arm reached. The light showed stone walls coated with dampness and a few claw-like marks he could not explain. They did not look like scratches from a bucket or a rope. They looked like someone tried climbing, but slipped again and again. His breath tightened as he lowered the light a little more. That was when he heard it, a soft but clear cry, like a child calling from deep below. Not only that, he felt eyes on his back again as if someone was standing behind him watching his every move. He slowly lifted his head, turned halfway, and saw a shadow move inside one of the ruined homes. He held his breath and watched the shadow slide out of sight. But he could not tell whether it was a human, an animal, or only his mind playing tricks. The ruined house stood still with no movement afterward, yet the feeling of someone hiding inside those walls grew stronger. He tightened his grip on his small torch and stepped away from the well slowly, turning his body so he could face both the houses and the well at the same time. Something inside his spirit told him that whatever was happening here was not simple. Desert places do not keep secrets without reason. Life does not disappear from homes without signs. A child's voice inside a deep well did not make sense, and the fresh bread hidden under broken wood did not match an abandoned ghost town. Every detail of this place pointed toward a hidden story that the world had forgotten. He walked toward the doorway where he had seen the shadow, making sure not to move fast or act like a threat. If someone feared him, they might run deeper into hiding, and that would make everything harder. He knew that people who survived in lonely lands were not always dangerous. Sometimes they were only scared. Sometimes they lost everything, and trust became harder than breathing. So he approached with calm energy, ready to show that he meant no harm. When he reached the entrance, he gently lifted his torch to light the inside. The flames revealed cracked walls, broken chairs, and a dusty floor. At first he saw nothing, but when he angled the torch slightly, he noticed tracks in the dust. They were made by bare feet, small ones, moving toward the back corner where shadows gathered. He spoke softly, saying he understood fear but needed truth. His voice echoed slightly, revealing the room was deeper than it looked. He stepped inside, not touching anything and not blocking the exit, so whoever hid inside would not feel trapped. The corner remained silent, but he saw a tiny movement, like a knee or elbow shifting. He lowered the torch so the light became softer, and after a long pause, something small peeked from behind an old blanket hanging on the back wall. He saw the outline of a face, small and frightened, eyes reflecting firelight like glass. It was a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, thin, dusty, and trembling. The child stared without blinking, as if unsure whether he was real or dangerous. The warrior whispered that he had heard the voice from the well and wanted to help. The child's lips moved, but no sound came out, like the voice was trapped behind fear. The warrior lowered his torch even further and took a slow step back to create more space. The child finally spoke in a weak voice, saying no one should stay here after sunset. When the warrior asked why, the child shook their head, eyes filled with something deeper than fear, something like memory. The warrior asked if the sound in the well belonged to someone they knew. The child looked down toward the floor instead of answering, then said the well was not empty. The warrior wanted to ask more, but the child suddenly crawled back behind the blanket as if a switch had turned inside them. He stepped out of the house to give space, thinking carefully about what he had learned. A living child in a deserted village meant someone must have kept them alive. Maybe a parent, a guardian, or someone dangerous. If someone tried to hide a child here, maybe they were protecting them from outsiders. Or maybe they were hiding from someone worse, someone who might return. The warrior sat near the fire for a moment to think. He did not ask the child to come closer, knowing trust needed time. Instead, he took a small piece of his dried food and placed it near the doorway, not forcing it but offering it. He turned away and walked toward another part of the village, letting the child decide whether to trust him or not. He passed through long-dead gardens, broken fences, and stone paths cracked by time. Everywhere he looked, he saw signs of a life that ended suddenly, not slowly. If drought had taken the water, people would have taken belongings with them. If war had reached the land, marks of conflict would remain. But here everything looked as if people left expecting to come back the next morning. Bowls remained on shelves. Clothes hung on ropes, tools leaned against walls. Something stopped them from returning. He moved toward the far edge of the village where a small stable stood. When he entered, the smell of old hay mixed with something metallic. He raised his torch and noticed metal traps inside, the kind used for protection from large wild animals. But they were closed, rusty, and untouched. Yet he felt something strange inside the stable, like a presence that did not belong to animals. The walls had symbols carved into them, similar to the faded mark he saw near the well. Maybe people in the village had tried to protect themselves, using signs to frighten something away. But whatever they feared, it seemed stronger than symbols. He walked back outside only to find the wind changing direction. A low hum floated toward the village, not natural like wind over rocks, but more like soft chanting or murmuring. He could not understand the words, nor could he locate the voice. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, like the land itself was whispering. He looked at the sky and saw that daylight was beginning to lower. Long shadows stretched across the sand and the heat softened into evening chill. The child's warning returned to his mind. No one should stay after sunset. He wondered what happened here when darkness took over. Did cries rise only at night? Did someone or something come up from the well? He could leave now and return with others, but the voice from below troubled him. He could not accept leaving someone behind if they were alive. He walked again to the center and checked the rope. The torchlight showed the rope had new fibers tied into the older part, meaning someone repaired it recently. He whispered into the well again, saying he heard them and wanted to help. This time, the answer was clearer. It was not a scream, not a shout, but a soft voice saying the same thing the child said. Do not stay here after sunset. The warrior felt conflict rising inside him. He could respect their warning and leave, or he could stay and search for answers. Both choices carried risk. If he left, he would never know the truth, and someone might still be trapped. If he stayed, he would face unknown danger. His tribe taught that bravery was not foolishness, but responsibility. He needed more knowledge before choosing. He walked back to the house where the child hid. The bread he left outside was now gone, and he noticed the blanket inside had moved, showing someone trusted him enough to accept food. He placed his torch on the ground and sat outside, speaking softly through the doorway. He asked where the others were, how long they had been alone, and why they feared night. At first, there was no answer, but after a long pause, the child spoke again. They said that people did not leave by choice. Something took them, not quickly, but slowly, one by one. They said at first, it was only sounds and dreams. Later it became real. The warrior asked who was inside the well. The child hesitated, then said it was someone who never escaped, someone who could not speak until danger grew strong. The child asked if he heard the humming. When he said yes, the child whispered that the humming never started until someone new arrived. That meant his presence awakened something that was sleeping. He looked toward the well again, his heartbeat returning strong. The sky darkened, and a thin line of moonlight formed on the horizon. The air turned colder, and the humming slowly changed tone, like something preparing to rise. The warrior placed his hand on his weapon and looked once more at the silent homes. Knowing he stood in the center of a secret that did not want to stay buried, and as the first full moment of night arrived, the well rope suddenly tightened, as if a hand below had gripped it. The rope tightened as if pulled by a living hand. And the torch fire wavered with a sudden breath of cold air rising from the well. The warrior stepped back, his body steady, but his heart beating harder than before. The village, which only felt abandoned during daylight, now felt like it was watching him from every broken window and dark doorway. He looked toward the house where the child hid, hoping they would step out again. But only fearful eyes peeked, and even those slowly disappeared behind the blanket as if the night itself carried commands. The humming in the air grew deeper, sounding like voices merging into a single tone that echoed through his bones. He could no longer tell if it came from below, above, or inside his thoughts. He held his breath, trying to understand whether he faced a danger of the living world or something beyond it. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. He walked closer to the well and placed one hand on the edge. The stone was colder than ice, though the night had only just begun. The rope kept pulling, slow and steady, like someone testing strength or trying to climb. The warrior leaned forward and called again, asking if there was someone who needed help. The rope released suddenly, causing it to slap against the stone, and a deep moan rose for a brief second before fading. His skin reacted instantly, but he stayed still, refusing to turn away. He had seen many hardships in his life, from storms to wild animals, from hunger to human betrayal. But this felt different. This danger was silent, quiet, patient, and unknown. The unknown is what tests courage the most. He took the torch again and lowered it a little. But before he could speak, a low whisper floated up, saying something he could not fully understand. The voice sounded tired, weak, and cold. The warrior then whispered back, asking who they were and how long they had been down there. No answer came, but he sensed that someone wanted to speak, though they struggled. He stepped away from the well, deciding he needed to understand the full story before taking any action. Pulling someone up in a place like this without knowing the truth could bring up danger instead of rescue. He walked back toward the child, calling softly for them to speak again. He heard movement inside, and after a long silence, the child whispered that the person in the well was not always trapped. Years ago, they lived with others, worked, loved, and shared daily tasks. But after strange signs began, people slowly changed. The first sign was sleepless nights filled with unknown cries. The second sign was dreams that felt real even after morning. Then things started missing. First objects, then animals, then people. The child said hardly anyone believed the warnings until it was too late. The warrior asked how the person fell into the well, and the child said they did not fall. They went down on purpose, trying to understand what was calling from below, thinking maybe it was a lost traveler or a trapped animal. But they never returned, and when people tried to pull them out using the rope came back burned or cut. After that, no one tried again. The warrior asked about the night fear. The child explained that each night the well did not stay silent. Voices came out, footsteps echoed where no one walked, and shadows moved where moonlight could not reach. The child said they survived only because someone hid them, someone strong and brave. But that person no longer spoke and might not be alive anymore. The warrior felt a heavy pull inside his chest. There were too many unanswered questions. He walked back outside and looked at the well again. Whatever was happening here did not feel like something natural. It felt like a force that wanted company, that wanted people to stay close. Maybe to replace what it lost, he decided he could not wait until the danger grew stronger. He walked toward the stable, grabbed old wood planks, broken tools, and ropes, preparing something to use if he needed to go down the well or defend himself. He worked with silent determination, letting no fear settle in his thoughts. While building, he heard soft footsteps behind him. When he turned, he saw the child standing outside, watching him with wide, confused eyes. He gently asked if the child wanted to help or needed something. The child asked why he had not run away yet like everyone else. He answered that he had heard a voice that sounded alive, and he could not leave someone behind. The child stared at him longer, as if trying to see inside his spirit, then slowly nodded. The sky grew darker and the moonlight turned pale. A chilling wind flowed between the ruined walls, making an eerie sound like long-distant wailing. The humming transformed into something stronger, almost like chanting rising from the earth. The warrior and the child stood together near the fire, both listening. Suddenly, pieces of wood around the well began to shake lightly as if something beneath pushed air upward. The warrior took a deep breath and lit 2 more torches, placing them around the well so no part of it remained hidden in darkness. He noticed then that his shadow cast against the ruins did not match his movements. When he raised his hand, his shadow did not raise at the same time. He lowered his arm, and his shadow stayed still for a moment, then moved slowly as if awakening. His blood chilled, but he did not show fear. Sometimes what controls others feeds on fear, and he would not offer any. He picked up a long stick and touched the rope gently, trying to measure the pull. A sudden jerk nearly pulled him forward, forcing him to hold his balance. The child gasped and hid behind him. He looked at the child and promised that no matter what happened, they would not face the night alone anymore. The child became emotional, eyes filling with tears, trembling not from cold, but from memories that had never healed. The warrior asked where the others went and whether any of them ever returned. The child said, only one person returned once, but they were not the same. They had changed, lost their voice, and stayed only long enough to warn everyone to run. Then they disappeared again, walking slowly back to the well before sunrise. The warrior now knew he could not simply observe. He needed to know what lived beneath that stone circle. With the torches set, he tied a stronger knot using both the new fibers and the old rope so it held double weight. He tested it with all his strength. The rope held firm. He then wrapped cloth around his hands to avoid burns and prepared to lower himself slightly. Not fully yet, just enough to see deeper. The child tried to stop him, saying the night was strongest now and going down would break something that kept him safe. The warrior thanked the child, but said peace never comes to people who walk away from trapped souls. He spoke gently, not like a fighter, but like someone who understood that healing requires answers. He held the rope and leaned over the well, letting the torch shine deeper than before. The humming stopped, as if waiting. The cold air thickened like fog. The warrior lowered himself slowly, his feet hanging above the darkness, each breath steady. For a brief moment, he heard a voice clearer than ever, saying his name even though no one here knew it. Then something touched his foot. The touch on his foot felt cold and weak. Not like claws or something wild, but like the hand of someone who had not felt sunlight for many years. He stopped breathing for a moment, holding the rope tightly, and waited without moving. The night around him grew quieter, almost like it was watching to see what he would do. The child above whispered his name, shaking with fear, but the warrior spoke back gently, saying he was all right. He lowered his torch a little more, and the light finally reached deeper than before. In that dim glow, he saw the shape of a person sitting against the wall of the well, half soaked, half wrapped in old cloth. Eyes open, but heavy with exhaustion and fear that seemed older than time. The person did not scream or try to climb. They simply looked up at him, as if seeing another human after a lifetime of darkness was almost too much to believe. The warrior spoke slowly, asking if they could hear him and if they wanted help. The person nodded with a faint movement, then whispered that they did not fall down by accident. They came here because voices told them there was someone in need down below. When they reached the bottom, they heard a cry just like he did, but they found only echoes. After that, they could not climb back. The rope burned their hands, something kept pulling from below. And night after night the well felt alive, like it did not want to let them go. The warrior asked what the voices wanted, and the person whispered that the voices were not from spirits or monsters, but from the pain of memories held inside the stones. The well was old, built before the village, and it held the energy of everything it witnessed. When the village grew strong, the well stayed calm. But when fear and mistakes filled the people, the well carried that fear too. It did not trap them with force. It trapped them with fear, confusion, and broken hope. Anyone who entered with fear could not leave, till someone with a clear heart offered help. The warrior understood that his strength was not only in his hands or his training, but in his calm spirit. He told the trapped person that he would pull them up slowly, and that they must not focus on fear, only on the hope waiting at the top. The person nodded, and he signaled the child to hold the rope steady while he changed position. Together they started pulling with slow, steady effort. The person climbed, using every bit of remaining strength, and the rope began rising, inch by inch. The humming sound that had filled the night slowly faded, as if the land knew its hold was being released. When the trapped person finally reached the top, they fell to the ground and cried quietly. Breathing in the cold night air for the first time, the child came out from hiding and looked at the rescued person with wide eyes. They recognized each other and hugged tightly, both shaking and crying at the same time. The warrior stepped back, letting them feel the moment without interruption. After a few minutes, the rescued person explained that they were the one who tried to protect the child. When the village started collapsing from fear, they hid the child and went to search the well, thinking they could stop whatever caused the strange sounds. They never returned, and the child spent every day waiting for them. Feeding them when possible, yet afraid to call others for help, the warrior asked what happened to the rest of the village. The rescued person said the fear spread quickly among people, and once they believed the place was cursed, they abandoned it without guiding each other. Some left quietly in the night, some ran, some simply refused to speak. Their fear fed the land, making the well stronger and darker. Fear can build walls stronger than stone, they said. No enemy needs weapons if fear takes over the mind. The warrior lit more firewood to warm the rescued person and handed them clean cloth. Slowly, their strength began to return. The night was still cold, but the humming had stopped completely, and the air felt lighter. The child looked up at the warrior and asked if they could leave now and find a place where people lived and there were real voices, not echoes from the ground. The warrior smiled and said yes, no one would stay another night here. He helped both of them gather whatever little they had, including the carved toy and the cloth that reminded them of love, not fear. Before leaving, the warrior walked once more to the edge of the well. He did not speak to it like before. Instead, he placed his hand on the stone and thanked it for the water it once gave and for releasing the trapped soul. He believed that even old places with painful memories deserve respect and closure. The well did not answer, but the cold wind turned mild as if accepting peace. He placed a wooden board across the well, not to hide it or bury it, but to signal that no one should ever enter without knowing its history. When dawn arrived, the three of them walked away from the ruins. The sun painted the sky with warm colors, and for the first time, the child smiled while holding the warrior's hand. As they walked farther, the rescued person regained their voice and spoke with clearer words, saying they never imagined seeing sunrise outside the well again. They thanked the warrior, not with heavy words, but with the kind of gratitude that comes from the heart. The warrior responded that no human should ever be left alone in darkness, especially when hope is still alive somewhere. They traveled for days toward the warrior's homeland where safety, food, and people waited. Along the way, the child began to laugh again, and the rescued person learned to walk with steady steps. When they arrived at the camp near the mountains, they were welcomed with warm food, healing herbs, soft blankets, and gentle company. People listened to their story and learned that fear is the strongest enemy if left unchecked. The rescued person healed fully over time, and the child grew healthy among others. Learning new skills and building a life that did not include hiding or silence, the warrior often sat with them by the campfire, sharing stories, guiding them, and reminding them that courage is not only found in battle, but in staying calm when darkness tries to take over. He taught others too, using their journey as a lesson, saying that forgotten places often hold secrets, not curses. What matters most is how people face them and who stands with them in time. The child and the rescued person found a new purpose. They chose to help guide lost or frightened travelers, offering them comfort instead of leaving them behind. They wanted to make sure no one ever repeated the same mistake the village once made. From fear, they had grown into strength and wisdom. From silence, they found voice and community. The warrior continued his travels, but he never forgot them. He believed that every soul deserves rescue, every land deserves respect, and every story deserves an ending that leaves hope alive, not buried. Before leaving, he placed a new mark near the camp, a sign of protection and unity, not fear. And whenever people asked about the old abandoned well, he would say that places can heal too. as long as hearts remain brave, loyal, and guided by truth instead of fear.